Hello, Grandmasters. Mike from the WCA. Welcome back. Had a great time with you folks during our opening day. Hope you did too. You learned something about chess. 4 o'clock students did very well. This was the final position we had looking at a game by the young Judith Polgar. I think she's 12 when she played this game. I may have said younger. Anyway, she was really young. Played incredibly well, very instructive, and then we played from a set position. You guys remember the mate, how it ends here? There was a threat of this bishop kind of coming in here and you're getting mated on this square. So White decided to stop that simply by swinging the queen over, but got her in trouble. She played queen f5 here, and you'll see that there was a mate. Just queen takes f8, and the game is over. The king has to take, and then let me move it for you. And then we had this very simple deflection, or just knock away. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. The king has to run away from that square, and then you get mated up on top, okay? I want you to pay attention to something here on queen h6. I highlighted this bishop up here on c8, and if you remember during the lecture, I told you guys we're really going to concentrate this term on building these memory markers, these little things that pop up in positions that they actually repeat all the time, and you want to be able to see them so that when you're in time pressure, you get to play moves much faster than normal. So if you see your opponent has a bishop up there on c8, it's not in the game, then obviously the rook on the other side of that bishop is not working, and that very often leads to trouble. So, you know, if you see something like that in the future, look for tactics. There's an excellent chance that they will be there. Okay, let's go to how we got to this position. So this game in question begins as a Sicilian, and it goes into what's known as the Rossolimo variation. You guys don't need to really know the names yet, but some of the ideas you do. Here, White is avoiding an open Sicilian, and the open Sicilian is when they play d4, exchanging these two pawns, opening the game. That's why they call it the open Sicilian. The Rossolimo that you're looking at is one of the better sidelines for White. It's really a classical way to play, and by classical I mean very fast development, central control, king safety. You can see that White is already set to castle. These are actually the same moves as the Ruy Lopez, if this were a king pawn opening that White is playing, and they're ready to castle very quickly. Sometimes White will play for c3 followed by d4. That's one idea in this system. Another way is to take the knight, damage the pawn structure. If you're castled, you can put your rook on e1, threaten to push e5. There's a lot of ways that White can play, but in this game, Black decides to fianchetto the bishop. And remember, anytime that White does give up this bishop for the knight, you do run the risk in the future that Black will make use of the two bishops. So that's one reason why they just fianchetto. They're going to kind of fight you. If you mess the structure, they're going to try to open the game with the two bishops. All right, I hope this stuff makes sense, because I'm reading from a manual. I have no idea what I'm saying. Anyway, White castles, bishop to g7, and then Judith goes for the c3 plan, trying to play e4, and a kind of a cool line developed over the years where Black blocks his bishop. In this case, it's her bishop. This is in an Olympiad in 1988, and Black decides to block the bishop but gets firm control over d4, making it difficult to play this move. But it turns out it's really not difficult at all. You can just play it, and the resulting complications from these trades are pretty interesting. I can't go through it all because it's not really the memory marker that I want to leave you with, but I do want to show you the following, which is here. We got to this position in class, and the game continuation after a knight trade was pawn takes knight. In class, we discussed, because it came up, it was a question. Somebody asked, well, what happens if the bishop takes? If you do the math here, Black is up a pawn. If you take with the bishop, White is just going to develop, and you may think that White is not getting enough for the pawn, but there's a problem. You know, this d5 square is really, really weak. white is significantly ahead in development. I mean, this bishop is going to come out at some point, probably take over some of these dark squares, and the knight or the bishop someday can hop into d5. So white is definitely going to get some play. So somebody asked, well, what if you just get rid of the knight and take back here and play from this position? And as an exercise, if you recall, this is what we did in class. Now, memory marker time. You are never going to see this exact position. I shouldn't say never. It is highly unlikely you guys are going to see this exact position in one of your games. However, it is highly likely that you're going to see the concept of your opponent playing for material. So in this case, winning a pawn with black. Actually here the material is, no, that's right, they're still up a pawn. In return for what? So what did black give white? Where is the compensation? Well, there's a whole bunch of black squares on the board. I think there's 32 if my math is correct. And when you give up your dark squared bishop after fianchettoing here, you always run the risk of this bishop becoming a dominant piece. So that should be something of a memory marker for you if you're playing action chess. And the action chess is defined as chess 30 minutes or less. A lot of the tournaments that we play are action rated games where you only get 30 minutes on the clock. So don't spend too much time thinking how to defend the pawn. If you see that you're going to get an unopposed bishop like this one here in return for a pawn, lots of play, a safe king, you really should go for that without burning too much time on the clock. Okay, let me show you a couple of things that happened in the game. In one of the games here, we had the two Andrews battling it out, and Andrew M started with h6, and it's kind of a prophylactic move, stopping the bishop someday from coming to g5. He's just trying to cover some of these dark squares up. Maybe after castling, he can hide his king in here. You know, a little bit risky. So white plays queen f3, putting some pressure on f7, and black offers a trade. So this is a something of a memory marker. In the actual game, the queens came off the board, and it may not be best to trade queens here, and I'll explain why. You know, for example, if you just back away and you leave the queen on this queen here on f6, black now has the problem of, okay, what to do with this knight. If you make the natural development move, then black, for example, might play something like bishop f4. And after bishop f4, oh man, look at these crazy lines. And you see how black is going to suffer on these dark squares. One of these rooks is definitely going to come to the d file, and there's an enormous amount of pressure on the board. When you trade queens, like what happened in the game, you give the knight a chance to come out with a tempo, hitting this pawn. It is still okay for white. You know, white may actually even be a little bit better still because of the two bishops, but it kind of eases black's cramp a little bit. So the knight came out, and the game continuation was pretty interesting. Andrew F played bishop a3, and then pawn a6 attacking the bishop. The bishop went back, b6, so black can develop the light square bishop, rook a to d1, and then castle. Okay, pawn f3 in order to secure the e-pawn. Bishop to b7 is a mistake, and it's a mistake because of this double attack. This is the game continuation. Okay, so after this, black is in a little bit of trouble here. So to Andrew M's credit, I'm just going to say black because I'm getting confused. After b5, he's starting to fight back, but white makes a little bit of a mistake here. Both minor pieces are hanging, so the rook can take the knight, the pawn can take the bishop. So what happened is, when you take the knight and you allow this trade, the players got into an ending with bishops of opposite color. It was still fine for white because They definitely had a little bit more pressure on the dark squares. After this pawn falls, for example, you can see that this dark squared bishop is kind of free to run around these dark squares, where the white squared bishop for black is limited by this pawn structure. It's still really fine, and he held it. He held it all the way to the end of class, but I want to go back to the decision to take the knight here. So here is the double attack after rook d6. b5, very good. You have to get some counterplay, but don't take the minor piece right away. Maybe drop the bishop back, because by doing that, you're telling black, look, if you move your knight, I'm going to take this pawn. And then I'm totally dominating the dark squares. All the squares in the center, I have two bishops. The board is opening up. So I'm almost going to force you to continue getting your counterplay. Now you take the knight, because that exposes the bishop on a3 to this rook. Okay? So here, if you take the bishop, we just take, king takes, pawn takes, and this is a much better version than what happened in the game. Here, black has a lot of work to do to draw this because of the, being up in exchange, and the rooks are going to come to some decent squares. You'd have to always be a little careful with a rook that's in a box like this. Make sure that it can get out if it gets attacked, but I don't think you'll have trouble in this position. Okay, so that was one version of what happened from that set position. Let me show you another. Okay, so here is Liam, who was our student teacher, playing against Fred. And remember, Liam, when he first came to the WCA as an 11-year-old, I think he's 16 now, we asked him what are the odds of him playing in tournaments, and he said less than 0. And now he's trying to make expert, which is really, really an incredible accomplishment. So here he's playing Fred, who willingly took black. Fred is going to try to hang on to the material, and Fred tried something. He tried to activate the queen, gaining a tempo on the bishop, and he ended up getting into trouble quickly. Liam protected the bishop. Queen went underneath, so if the bishop moves, you're going to have a queen swap. So Liam just protects the bishop. Notice that you can't shoo the bishop away here. You can't play pawn a6 because Liam just takes, and you're going to lose your queen here. So that could have been an issue for sure. So after a4, the game continuation was queen e6, another queen move. And to his credit, I don't blame Fred. If the queens come off the board, you may be able to live with those dark squared weaknesses, even though the end game might be difficult. But Liam says, no way, I'm not making any trades with you, so I'm going to attack with the bishop, and you have to make sure you keep that pawn protected. Sorry, I didn't mean to move that. Okay, so the queen drops back, keeping an eye on that square. The last minor piece comes into the game, hitting the dark squares, and to Fred's credit, he's kind of already getting squeezed, so he plays g5 to play dynamically. Liam keeps the bishop on the same diagonal. I mean, this is a really, really strong diagonal, and then he just goes for broke here, attacking the bishop, which can be ignored because after rook on a to d1, you'll see those highlights. Not only do you get control of the file, but you get control of the d6 square, meaning when you attack the bishop, it just hops into d6, and now black is in real trouble here. After queen f6, Liam very nicely plays f4, which is just going to completely open the game. It's going to open the f file. It's going to threaten e5. It's going to threaten bishop to e5. There are so many threats that black just ended up losing in one move. He played knight h6 and walked into bishop to e5. Okay, so those are two very, very different examples. But let me point out a memory marker for you here, and I hope you know what I mean by that. Just some sort of hint or indication that you'll remember a concept in the future. And let me show it to you here, this one. If you're playing the white pieces in a position like this, look at every white piece. So the rooks are connected down here at the bottom, right? Both bishops are active. You have a battery, you have a central pawn, which can't be taken because you're going to open the e file to the king, right? So in your future games, when you see that you have this much of development, don't be afraid of pawn pushes from your opponent on the other side. There's absolutely no way that they're going to break through. And again, Fred was already in trouble, so I'm not faulting Fred for trying this. I just don't want you guys panicking. When you see pawn moves like this, thinking that, oh man, black is going to overrun you. When you have this much development, there's always going to be outs for you and play. Okay. All right. Let's go quickly through the rest of the game the way Polgar played it. So in their game, from this position, black took with the pawn, leaving white temporarily a pawn down. However, there's this cute pawn move e5 from white. And by playing e5, you can't take that pawn. If you take it, you're just going to get pinned. And you play a move like f6 or whatever, f4 is going to come and black's going to get opened up and you're going to lose material. So e5 is really annoying. It stops the bishop from protecting this pawn, so white can take it whenever she wants. It's number one. Can you see what else this does? And again, this is another memory marker. It's just amazing how easy chess is if you recognize all the lines. You can't take the pawn because of this line here. You can't develop the knight so easily. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Because of this pawn here. It's not that hard, So white puts the knight here. At least it's hard for me. I don't know about you guys. I can't play this game. Anyway, she plays bishop to g5. And the game is fine. Black is more than in the game here. But I want you to understand the compensation that she got for her pawn. White, after bishop g5, black castles, and then Judith decides to get the pawn back. So now the material is equal, and players in this position have tried all sorts of things. They've tried knight f5 to trade the queens. You see how both queens would then be attacked. But in this game, black plays knight to c6, offering to get the queens off the board tactically, and then black just says, or white says, no way, I'll keep the queen on the board, and queen b6, attacking the bishop. Clearly, we're going to play knight to c3, protecting the bishop, and invite black into tactically winning a piece. So if we can eliminate this knight, we could take this bishop. So black goes for that with bishop takes e5, and then Judith plays rook a to e1. Now, after rook a to e1, she's daring black to go for the material. And when you first glance at this, you think as black you have enough time to get away with it. So if you want to pause your video and look at this position, because this is what happened in the game. White gave up a piece, but black is in big trouble. To find the answer, you have to understand the memory marker again, or what's in this position that should look odd to you. From the white side, aside from being down a piece, it's a little odd that this rook is here, tucked in. But I think that is played for a couple of reasons. If you had left this rook on a1 and used this rook here, sometimes the queen can swoop down here, and there are some tricks, because if you ever lift that other rook, this rook here is going to hang. So that could be one reason why Polgar used this rook instead of this one here, but it should look a little funny to you, right? Okay, what else looks funny in the position? What about the black side? Well, how about this bishop up here on c8? So by going down a piece, Polgar's thinking, all right, I'm going to create a threat on the king side, and I don't really think I'm down a piece at all. I actually think I'm up a rook. I know that sounds bizarre because she is technically down a minor piece, but if this is the extra minor piece, well, it's not in the game, and not only is it not working, it's stopping this rook from getting out at all. So is she really down material? Absolutely not. She played queen h6, which contains a deadly threat. And, you know, look at the marker again. Just stare at that bishop on c8 and remember this stuff for your own games. And this is how the video started. Okay? Queen here. And there's your simple checkmate. Black missed it. Check, king over, rook in. Okay, my friends? 20 minutes of your life on this video. I hope you learned something.